Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. With that being said, Ms. Lawhead, would you please call the first panel, the only panel?
Yes, we have Scott Sauer, Interim General Manager for SEPTA.
Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Council President.
Good to see you again.
Again, yes, sir.
You can state your name and title officially for the record and begin your testimony.
My name is Scott Sauer, and I am the Interim General Manager of SEPTA. Good afternoon, Council President Johnson, Transportation and Public Utilities Committee Chair Driscoll, members of Philadelphia City Council, and guests. I'm pleased to be joined by Chief Charles Lawson of the Transit Police. I'm also joined by members of the SEPTA team representing various departments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of SEPTA's budget request as part of the City of Philadelphia's fiscal year 2026 budget. The City of Philadelphia's $135 million contribution under Mayor Parker's budget proposal will help SEPTA meet its state legislatively mandated requirement to secure local matching funds to maximize the state's operating subsidy of $896 million. Critically, while SEPTA is proposing an austere budget based on current state funding, the City of Philadelphia's proposed contribution reflects a commitment that will match the additional state assistance that would be generated through Governor Shapiro's statewide transit funding plan. Thank you for this strong commitment to SEPTA's future. We are grateful to have the support of City Council on so many SEPTA initiatives over the past year. SEPTA Key Advantage, the Zero Fare pilot, automated bus lane enforcement, the smoke-free SEPTA campaign, and the major role that SEPTA played in the success of the Eagles Super Bowl parade in early February, carrying 400,000 fans to NRG Station, the Parkway, and all points in between. This is my first time testifying before the full council in my new role. I am the proud son of a trolley operator and have followed my father, Robert, to SEPTA in 1990. I've had a great opportunity to build a career at SEPTA that has included leading the system safety and operations divisions, and now the full organization as its interim general manager. Through both my personal and professional experience, I know how critical SEPTA is to our city, and I am committed to seeing us through a crisis that threatens our public transportation system as we know it. Last Thursday, SEPTA released its fiscal year 2026 budget that would require 45% service cuts, coupled with major fare increases and workforce reductions, to balance a $213 million budget deficit without a permanent state funding solution for transit. And while we are cutting service, we would be asking riders to pay more under a 21.5% fare increase. A 20% service cut would take effect in August, followed in September by the fare increase, giving SEPTA the highest single-trip fare in North America, alongside MTA of New York, and a complete hiring freeze that would leave critical operations and safety positions unfilled. By next January, cuts then would total 50 bus routes, 25 in the city of Philadelphia alone, and service on the 5 regional rail lines that operate over Amtrak territory, including the Chestnut Hill West, would also be eliminated. Remaining bus and rail routes would operate significantly fewer trips, and all rail service would end at 9:00 p.m. each day. Approximately 800,000 passenger trips are recorded on SEPTA on an average weekday. With this diminished system that we could be forced to operate by January, approximately 350,000 of those trips would be lost. And we expect that more would follow as service is degraded. SEPTA will not be able to provide additional service for special events or support the transportation needs of our world-class city when we host the World Cup, the semi-quincentennial, and other major events planned for next year. SEPTA's budget proposal was extremely difficult for me to present personally, and I know it was even more difficult for our customers and the public to hear. If implemented, it would effectively dismantle SEPTA, leaving the city and region without the frequent, reliable transit service that has been an engine of economic growth, mobility, and opportunity for the millions who call Greater Philadelphia home. For more than 2 years, we have been warning that this moment was coming. Now, with our new fiscal year starting on July 1 and a state funding solution still not in place, we cannot budget on hope and have no choice but to budget based on the resources available. But this does not have to happen. Governor Shapiro has proposed a statewide transit funding plan that would prevent these drastic measures from occurring. Legislative action on Governor Shapiro's proposal now would provide stability and certainty for SEPTA and transit agencies across the Commonwealth to maintain operations and deliver critical service. And I want to take a moment to thank the members of Council for your strong support of SEPTA's efforts to secure funding in Harrisburg, particularly for participating in Friday's rally and for your strong statements highlighting how critical SEPTA is to the people and communities you represent. I can't tell you how meaningful it is for all our employees to know you have their backs. You are putting your name and actions behind SEPTA, and I want you to know that we are doing all we can to operate efficiently and fulfill our promise to provide the safest, cleanest, and most reliable service. This is not a position SEPTA ever wanted to be in, and we have worked hard to narrow our budget deficit. An aggressive austerity plan, including a freeze on management pay and cuts to third-party consultants, combined with revenue-generating measures, including a 7.5% fare increase and the resumption of paid parking at regional rail lots, have helped reduce SEPTA's budget deficit from $240 million in the current fiscal year down to a forecast of $213 million in fiscal year 2026. At the same time, we are making important progress on the priorities that matter most to our customers and our funding partners, including a 33% drop in serious crime on the system, the largest one-year decrease in SEPTA's history, the highest number of uniformed transit police officers in more than a decade, 47 consecutive months of year-over-year ridership growth, with 11 of 12 months in 2024 increasing by 10% or more over 2023. Advancing the top-to-bottom restructuring of cleaning operations, adding 76 frontline surface bus operators, and the completion of contactless payment implementation across all modes. And our customers are noticing too. SEPTA's first quarter customer satisfaction survey shows statistically significant improvements in every category from safety and cleaning to reliability and convenience. SEPTA's funding crisis is coming at the worst possible time and would undo the steady progress we've been making. We need to keep this positive momentum going for the customers and communities we serve. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on funding and other priorities in the coming year. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today in support of SEPTA's fiscal year 2026 operating budget request. I'm grateful for your support of SEPTA, and I welcome your questions.
Well, thank you very much. Just have a couple brief questions before I turn it over to members of City Council. I want to start off by acknowledging Wendy Harvey Green, just for her hard work and her dedication in representing SEPTA here in City Council through a variety of different transitions of leadership and a variety of different peaks and valleys as it relates to SEPTA moving forward in the city of Philadelphia. And I have to remind people, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when I served as chair of Transportation and Public Utilities, we received the award for having the most outstanding transportation authority, not in the city of Philadelphia, but in the nation. And so we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can do possibly to support SEPTA during this crisis. We know that in the city of Philadelphia, we have our investment, but we need for our partners on the state level to really, really make sure that we are prepared, not only for 2026. I know that everybody, sounds the alarm and said, well, we have a crisis with SEPTA and we're not going to be prepared for 2026. And I believe we have to address this issue to be prepared for 2026. But I want to talk about the day-to-day people that uses SEPTA every single day, whether that's our children going to and from school, from our seniors going to and from the doctor's office, to our everyday working class families going to and from work. And so we have to always make sure that we're focusing on those most vulnerable and those most in need that rely on SEPTA every single day, even as we prepare for 2026. I also want to acknowledge Pam McCormick, give her a round of applause as well, because she's in the thick of it in Harrisburg, advocating, demanding, and getting folks that do not live in the Philadelphia and five-county region who live across this state to look at SEPTA in a favorable light. So we want to support bridges and roads throughout Pennsylvania, and I think that's something we should do, but also making sure that because SEPTA is the economic engine for the region, and the city of Philadelphia pretty much provides a significant amount of revenue that makes all parts of Pennsylvania able to thrive, then we should be treated as such. But I'm a former legislator in Harrisburg, so such is not the case. And so we want to continue to advocate and be supportive of your efforts. Talk to me about, and I asked you this earlier when I saw you at a meeting, but I just want to go on the record of it. I know part of our financial management, we pay $65 million to Amtrak to utilize their rails. And I know this isn't something that's uncommon, but just go on the record on how we can advocate to restructure that deal with Amtrak, hopefully, in the future. And then obviously you have proposed a significant amount of cuts. And I think these are cuts across the board. But how are we still taking consideration those neighborhoods that are already severely not receiving the level of service that we should be giving them just based upon our budgets and equity? And so can you talk about those two, please?
Sure. On the Amtrak topic, so SEPTA runs 3 entire lines on Amtrak territory: the Trenton line, the Wilmington-Newark line, and the Paley-Thorndale line. We also run 2 other lines partially on Amtrak territory. Those are the Kinwood and the Chestnut Hill West lines. We have an obligation through a legislative action from Congress to pay Amtrak for the lease, essentially, to run our service on this territory. That covers our operating needs, which would include things like propulsion power and maintenance of the infrastructure. Would also cover, there's also a portion of it that covers capital needs. So if Amtrak were to replace track or overhead catenary systems, they would dip into this fund. You're correct in that SEPTA is not the only entity that pays into this. Every state entity, every transit agency that runs on SEPTA on Amtrak territory pays similarly to Amtrak for that right to run on that territory. The difference that in SEPTA, however, than some of our neighbors is because we are not directly controlled by the state government. The state governments in New York and Massachusetts, for example, Maryland, pay directly to Amtrak from their budgets, whereas SEPTA essentially pays out of our operating funds that we receive from Harrisburg. We pay into that fund. So the $65 million that we've cited as savings is our net savings. So that is short of the other dollars that we would pay them for a variety of issues, and then $65 million is dollar for dollar back into SEPTA's budget just by not operating on that territory. So the actions that we have taken thus far, and we continue to take, and this is not a new conversation, we've had discussions with our congressional delegation on these payments, what they mean to SEPTA. We've also had conversations with PennDOT on ways that they may be able to do something differently for SEPTA. As you know, as I'm sure you're well aware, PennDOT, the Commonwealth, has their own budget deficit that they are dealing with, but as of today, we have to make that payment if we run on that territory, but activity continues to try to advocate for a change in that. It is legislation, however, so it would be a heavy lift for Congress to change.
Have you and your team invited Senator Pittman to the city of Philadelphia to take a tour of all the great things SEPTA has to offer here in the city of Philadelphia, since Obviously, he lives in another part of the state and may have a certain perspective about the city of Philadelphia and the importance, or his my unimportance of SEPTA to our region.
We have, and we still hope to meet with Senator Pittman at some point, and I'm sure we will. So whether we can have the senator here to entertain him with SEPTA and show him all the things, the really good things that are happening with SEPTA and the city, or if we go to Harrisburg to meet with Senator Pittman, we're open to any way we can have dialogue.
I would recommend you and your team needs to go to Harrisburg like ASAP. Yourself, not a consultant, not the chamber. You should lead that charge to show how critically important SEPTA is to the region. And again, I know we keep talking about 2026, which is great, and we want SEPTA to be up and running, but I'm also very, very concerned about people who live in our most vulnerable neighborhoods, the people who are most vulnerable population of individuals who utilize SEPTA day in and day out. Hence why you have an advocate here, Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke, fighting for zero fare and making sure that the most vulnerable population is taken care of because they rely on SEPTA every day. And so whatever we can do to be supportive of those efforts, I work with Senator Pittman on the state level, but this is also most importantly about advocating to take care of the most vulnerable population of individuals who need support. I want you to just briefly, before I turn over to my members, because it's easy to come and we give you feedback when SEPTA comes in front of us. A lot of that feedback is very critical because we want to see things being done. You touted some numbers earlier today around the issue of crime and public safety that your team has been working on. That's been something that we in this body has been taking SEPTA to task on day in and day out. So Scott, give us an update on the progress you have been making regarding public safety.
Yes, certainly, and we appreciate the feedback from council. We take that to heart, and crime reduction, safety is no different. So we have heard loud and clear. We need to be safer. We need to be more secure. So the efforts that Chief Lawson particularly has undertaken over the last year plus has been remarkable, to say the least. We have been able to reduce crime by the highest numbers that we've ever seen in the Transit Police Department's 43-year history, down 33%. These are remarkable figures. We've been able to raise the ranks, the number of sworn police officers in the department to 248. We are actually bucking a trend in our neighboring law enforcement agencies where we are seeing positive numbers consistently coming into the police department. We have a class currently in the police academy which is scheduled to graduate in June, and we are already filling our next class to begin in July. The chief and his staff have made tremendous efforts to recruit and to even return police officers who had left the Transit Police Department during the pandemic for other positions in other departments. They are returning. And we have lured in other police officers from other law enforcement agencies as well. Law enforcement officers now see SEPTA as an attractive place to come and contribute to the safety of our system. We have really done, we've introduced a virtual patrol unit, which uses the 30,000 cameras we have in the system to monitor. It's a force multiplier for our officers on the ground to be able to direct resources and to combat things before they become an issue. We've also introduced now a surface transportation unit. This is a unit of dedicated officers and leadership that are dedicated full-time to buses and trolleys, so that now we're not only patrolling the subway systems and our rail network, but we're out on the buses and trolleys, also preventing incidents from occurring there. And when it comes to employees, employee assaults and issues impacting our employees has been a big problem. We've been able to reduce those incidents in almost half, 42%. So we have really made tremendous strides to keep the system safe.
And that was my follow-up question, because I know the hardworking workers that work for SEPTA, specifically under TWU, who are on the front line day in and day out. I know one of the sticking points was public safety during the negotiations. Have we made progress with putting, I guess it's the glass, the glass, bulletproof glass that protects the actual SEPTA driver? Give me an update on that. I did see it in another country, So I want to get update on that in terms of how we're doing. And then also, last but not least, and I'll wrap up before I turn over to my members. We talk about the law enforcement component, right? But as we address public safety comprehensively, also talk about, or give us an update. I remember y'all rolled out an initiative that deals with behavioral health, individuals who are dealing with drug addiction, right, who are basically utilizing our SEPTA transit system, right, day in and day out, but it's having an impact on the quality of life for different neighborhoods, but also the actual, the person that's driving, the person that takes SEPTA every single day. So give us an update on that as well. The customer is what I'm getting at.
Certainly. So on the bus enclosures, so we've had for many years a bus enclosure that it was really designed, in the beginning, we were trying to curb some of this negative activity, customers on our employees. So we put in a bus barrier that exists today, but it's only a partial enclosure. So it was good at reducing the severity of most instances, but what it did not do is it did not fully encapsulate the operator, and it certainly was not bullet resistant. So what we have done, we've done a number of things, what we call our Safer Operator Compartment program, and it's the full cab enclosure, which is new in this country, but we are going to have an enclosure, and we already have a pilot bus running on the system today that the operators are testing for us, where the operator is now fully enclosed, ceiling to floor, from the rear to the window. This should prevent almost every physical encounter that they unfortunately have to endure. Everything from the hitting to the spitting, things being thrown at them. This should take care of that. What it doesn't do is address shootings. As you know, back in 2023, we had a horrific shooting on our bus that resulted in the death of
We just had a
Bernard
shooting
Goodman.
about 2-3 weeks ago, horrible, on the bus of a 15-year-old
For
young
sure,
man.
but
So go ahead.
certainly that. But speaking to the operators' safety, the TWU approached us about just under a year ago with an idea to do bullet-resistant glass. They had a vendor in mind that could do it. We went through a variety of testing. Most recently, we did the ballistics test. It passed with flying colors. So we are now moving ahead with an enclosure that includes this ballistics glass. The biggest hurdle for us to overcome was the weight. It adds significant weight onto the front axle of the bus. Our engineering staff has had to come up with some solutions for that, but we think we have it. So we'll have the first bus done by the end of June, and then we'll put 7 more into service soon after, so that each bus garage has at least 1 bus to be tested by the operators to ensure that it fits their needs. Chief Lawson, we've moved our behavioral health initiatives into the police department, so I'd like to ask Chief Lawson to comment on some of that.
Good afternoon, Council President. So you mentioned the SCOPE program. The SCOPE program, SCOPE is an acronym for safety, cleaning, outreach, engagement, and planning. And that program for us has netted tremendous gains for us on the system. That program remains almost completely intact as it was when it started. That program is doing tremendous work, and the director's doing tremendous work on bringing in partners.
Can we go into numbers? Can you go into numbers? How many people have been serviced under the SCOPE program? And what type of services did they receive? Treatment?
Yep. So I have some numbers for last year. Last year there were more than 142,000 engagements. The SCOPE team removed more than 120,000 people off the system that were not interested in treatment or violating our services in some manner. More than almost 19,000 people were given resources of some kind or another to help them out. More than 12,000 referrals to other agencies occurred in that program. More than 280 Narcan deployments. And they do tremendous work just with our everyday problems, trying to reduce smoking on the system, things like that. been a tremendous help. I do want to update council on just, as some of you have heard this, in late 2024, our Office of Inspector General conducted an audit on the SCOPE program. And part of that audit revealed some alarming issues centered around the outreach portion of that program. And so essentially they discovered some waste and some fraud in those contracts. And we felt obligated upon that discovery to kind of suspend those contracts and figure out a path forward to make the most for get the most for our money. I can tell you that we have revamped that SCOPE program. We've embedded them now in the police department. We have some of the restructuring that we've done has enabled us to hire now steady supervision to monitor the engagement activity of our outreach workers in the field. We're strengthening the onboarding training of that group. So we're putting a plan in place to have better oversight and accountability of our outreach contracts. And we are planning to reissue those contracts, have those folks on SEPTA by July 1.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Jim Harity.
Real quick, just for the information.
Jim, could you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, just for informational purposes, can you tell me, you canceled the contract for the SCOPE program. Who was the provider?
There were two providers. One was Net Northeast Treatment Center, and the other was Meraki.
And Councilman Harity, only one contract was canceled. Meraki is still under contract.
Wait, time out. Pause. Time out. So 2 contracts were canceled for fraud. I heard that wrong?
No, sir. The
Okay, help me out.
one contract. No, the waste that was discovered by the Inspector General.
The waste, not fraud, but waste.
Correct. The waste that was discovered by the Inspector General caused us to pause services while we re-engaged with Meraki. Meraki is still under contract. Northeast Treatment was terminated for convenience. So we parted ways, and that was long before the Inspector General's report was surfaced.
Because the reason why I said pause, because I know that as a city, we have other contracts with these agencies. So if they're engaging in waste with one agency, then why would we allow them to work with other agencies? So I wanted to do it. I will follow up and do a deeper dive, particularly as it relates to Meraki and Northeast Treatment. It's Northeast Treatment, because if they're engaging in waste, and this is Inspector General's finding, then they shouldn't be doing any business with City of Philadelphia and engaging any other contracts, at least from my perspective. It's like bringing an actual investigation in one department, but you're still getting to make money off the city in other departments. And so, okay. I want to start off with the Chair of Transportation, then the Majority Leader. Member Mike Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Welcome, Chief, and welcome, Scott. Good luck in your new responsibilities. It's certainly a unique time for you and for this Commonwealth and for this city. I think the Council President was spot on when he said that the Southeast is the economic engine for the Commonwealth. So when you go up there and you make your case to the Republicans and the Democrats, you let them know that this isn't a Democratic issue, this isn't a Republican issue, this is a workforce development issue for us to be continued as the economic engine for the Commonwealth, which we indeed are. And they need to hear that, because the rest of the state combined does not put in what the Southeast puts in to the state budget, as former state representative Kenyatta Johnson can attest, and I certainly had my 8 years up there. And you know, it's not easy what you're about to do, but it needs to be said. So I just want to lead with that. Not long ago, SEPTA announced that you authorized services of a new vendor for the key card fare product. And what I wanted to know is the status of that, and how does that stand as it relates to last week's budget proposal?
Sure. So just a few months ago, the board authorized us to move ahead with our second version of Septic Key. We awarded that contract to Cubic. For the total amount was $211 million, and that includes back office and infrastructure. And what this is an upgrade of the current system, which is about 15 or 16 years old now, and it has experienced failures. Our customers will tell you that there are days when the fare readers do not work. There are days when they can't load value onto their cards. And we have discovered through a variety of methods that we had to recover revenue from our current vendor in order to be made whole due to system failures. That's just a product of a software system that has aged out. By comparison, if your iPhone that you use, if you use an iPhone, this would be the equivalent of using your iPhone 4 in 2025. So we are beyond that now at this point, and so it's time for an upgrade. So the $211 million, and it's certainly a large figure, and we appreciate the people that scrutinized it, and it deserved that scrutiny. But it will be spread out over the life of the contract, so it equates to somewhere around $15 to $16 million per year. And the operating costs, once we transition from Key 1 to Key 2, the operating costs will eventually return to the same levels that they are today. There will be a brief period in the middle where we're running both systems concurrently, and the operating costs will elevate, but soon it will return, and we will be fully in Key 2.0, and the operating costs will be exactly the same. So where is it today? So it is at its infancy right now. We are still going through the initial engineering and design. But customers will start to see Key 2.0 where they can kind of see it and touch it in about 2 years. And that's about how long it will take before we start to see kind of things start to roll out on the front end. All the back end work is happening now.
And how long was the contract?
Contract is projected to take about 6 to 7 years total.
Okay. And Mr. President, just another question. What has SEPTA done to generate additional funding on your own? And are you maximizing your advertising income or looking for other ways to make up these funds?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Definitely, we have increased on our own as much revenue generation as we can. So just in the last 6 to 8 months, we've reinstituted parking fees at all of our lots and garages. That's generated an additional $4 million in new revenues that we did not have. The fare increase, which I mentioned back in December, was $14 million. We are also trying to maximize to the greatest extent every resource we have available for advertising. So we have five of the 6 largest naming rights packages for station naming rights with Jefferson, Wawa. I'm gonna miss them all. NRG, you know what I mean. But our station naming rights packages have been very advantageous to us. We have electronic messaging now on our Silverliner 5s, electronic messaging on our newest buses where we can place advertising. And we are in the process of developing smart advertising where as the bus traverses through the city, it can change depending on where it is as to what gets advertised. So we can advertise local businesses, for example.
I have a point of information.
So there's a number of new
I have
revenues.
a point of information.
I'm sorry.
And I'll let you continue.
Oh.
And elaborate on, some time ago, I remember reading an article that SEPTA sold certain properties at a nominal cost to a particular developer. And it begs the question, if we need money, then why would we sell the property rights at a nominal cost if we're trying to generate as much revenue if we know this doomsday scenario is coming? And this is along the line of questioning of generating revenue.
Sure. So it's as much revenue generation as it is cost savings to SEPTA. So it's a very common practice when in our case and it certainly has happened in other cases. The stations that, for example, the stations that I believe you're referencing are in the Germantown section of the city. There were 5 stations. They were in various states of disrepair, the station buildings. And those station buildings were costing SEPTA about $150,000 a year to maintain. And that's just to keep them.
What did we sell the land for?
So,
The chair recognizes Councilmember Bass.
I'm sorry.
Scott, I just can't.
I didn't look this way.
Come on now. You know, these properties are in Chestnut Hill and Germantown.
Yes, correct.
And so, yes, so it's not just Germantown. This is some of the most valuable real estate in the city of Philadelphia, and you gave it away for $1. And you all gave it away under a program called a FASO. A FASO is a Finding a Special Opportunity, FASO. And so you found a special opportunity, which is essentially a hookup. So call it what it is. It's a hookup. You gave somebody a hookup. That's what it is. And so, you know, here we are trying to figure out money to keep this system running. And at the same time, you know, there's these side deals which are making wealthy people even wealthier. I ain't got no problem with anybody making money. That's okay with me. But at the same time, you can't come before us asking for these very valuable, very limited resources, and at the same time, hooking up people that, you know, that you want to hook up. I just say, and the fact that there was no community participation, no involvement from the neighborhood, no say-so in terms of what they wanted to see. We gave away you gave away 5 properties in some of the most valuable neighborhoods in the city of Philadelphia for $1 for 99 years. Who doesn't want that deal? I'll take that deal. Who doesn't want that deal? Anybody want? Like, this is a hookup. So let's call it what it was. Like, I just, you know, I couldn't sit and hear that it was just something that was saving SEPTA money, because it's really not a matter of saving SEPTA $150,000 a year when these properties are valued at much more than that. If you had put them on the market and sold them, you would have sold them for more than $150,000. A whole lot more. They would have sold for, I don't know.
So for the record, Scott, I know you have a response. Could you just, for the record, for the edifice of my members, what are the 5 locations located at regarding these particular properties?
So the locations are Gravers, Mount Airy, Carpenter, Tulpehocken, and Upsall stations.
Okay. And in terms of the arrangement, do we just sell it, or is it like an agreement where we get some revenue or profit from? I guess it's a partnership, or
So it is a 99-year lease, and the developer agrees to lease the stations. It's $1, and they agree to maintain the stations, and they're also going to improve the station building for some development, typically commercial development.
So if they're doing, let's say, high-end condos, do we get any revenue off of it?
So these stations are likely not that. They would be the revenue we're generating is the recovery of costs that we would expend to maintain the stations.
So
it's the $150,000 a year. And that $150,000 a year savings started the day they signed the lease. And there's also a capital improvement that the developer will have to, that has agreed to invest in the stations, totaling nearly $4 million.
Chair recognizes, gentleman, Councilman Bass.
President, so I just want to be clear on what you're saying, which is that not that SEPTA is getting $150,000 a year. What is happening is that SEPTA is just not putting out $150,000 a year, and is basically just giving away the property. So you just gave it away so you don't have to do the maintenance on the property anymore. That's what's happening here. I just want to be absolutely clear so it doesn't seem as if there's, you know, resources coming back to SEPTA from this transaction, because there's not.
Councilmember Thomas.
Why didn't you just sell it?
Well, we still want the stations. They still belong to SEPTA. We want to use the stations. They're our property.
Dr. Nina Ahmad.
So I understand that you were leveraging what you had without selling it, the 91. But there's always a very robust revenue sharing model that could have been used. Do you know why it wasn't, or when this happened, and under whose aegis this happened? Because there's more, is there a clause for clawback?
So-
There's different ways to handle this.
I would like to do this. I'd like to do this, just to continue managing. We're still on, the floor is still open to Councilmember Mike Driscoll, Chair of Education, and besides just points of information, these lines of questioning could be directed when individuals are called. Just want to maintain just some order on the floor. Member Driscoll, please continue your line of questioning.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'll save mine for round two.
Okay. All right. The chair recognizes Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson, then Councilman Jamie Gauthier, who took the train today, and then also Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke, who took the train today as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council President, and thank you to SEPTA. I wanted to start with the thank yous that we've done for every hearing, then I have 5 questions that I must get on the record. One, I want to thank you, Council President, for the suggestion regarding SEPTA's senior leadership engagement around Harrisburg. As our Chair of Transportation, Member Driscoll, stated, and our Council President, who are both veterans of the State House, it'll be important that we have that level of engagement directly from the leadership team at SEPTA up in Harrisburg. So I wanted to underscore that matter. In addition to that, we want to thank Wendy Green Harvey, always responsive and collaborative with members of City Council, our Philly's own Fran Kelly, and Pamela McCormick, also the entire planning department for their work and collaboration on the bus revolution. I know it was painful, but I appreciate each and every one of you. To your board chair, Ken Lawrence, I appreciate his work on the bus revolution and just everything SEPTA. And then also, I must give a shout out to Leslie Richards. She was wonderful to work with. And then TWU 234 and all of our bus operators and those who work on the system. Scott, we're very happy for you as well because you rose through the ranks. Very similarly started as an operator, and we appreciate your institutional knowledge that you bring in a moment wherein it'll be important for SEPTA in this moment. So I have very quickly just 5 questions. I'm going to give you all my questions so I can get them on the record. One, SEPTA's planning department, as I just notated, led the way on a project titled Bus Revolution. It was supposed to be this comprehensive new bus network that would yield more efficient bus service. I really appreciated all the work that you all did in, slowing down the project and working with us so we could have additional community engagement. But considering the recent budget crisis announcement, where does that project stand? And then next, I wanted to talk about the impact for young people because I think that was lost. And at the most recent press conference that was held by Senator Saval, and others, the students spoke, and I was just struck thinking about all the years that I rode SEPTA to and from West Philly and the Philadelphia High School for Girls. So what would be the impact on the student fare card program? And then additionally, for youth impact, I want to talk about current. How are you all working with the Philadelphia Police Department and our Department of Human Services regarding curfew enforcement on the line from a safety perspective as well? There have been a ton of incidents as it relates to young people, and we have community evening resource centers where young people can be taken to receive resources if they're out past curfew. So what are you all doing around curfew enforcement on the line? Because a lot of times when things are happening like these flash mobs and other things, young folks run to the line and I don't know that there's any curfew enforcement happening. And then finally, because I want to respect and honor the clock, how are you all working with the Office of Homeless Services? I asked this question last year regarding, in particular, the dedicated beds, if any, for SEPTA, but how you all interface directly with the city's Office of Homeless Services.
Okay, I think I have them all. So let me start with Bus Revolution. So we appreciate the input that you gave to Bus Revolution and everyone from council. So that project is not done. It's paused pending the outcome of funding.
Okay.
If funding comes, that we can take that right off the shelf and begin an implementation process that will start with a broad communications plan to educate our customers on the changes prior to them taking effect. But should funding come, we could begin implementation as early as February of 2026.
Okay.
As for our student fare programs, that is a program that is currently funded by the state legislature, or the state Commonwealth. So while the service may be cut, there's no plan at this point to do anything different with student fares than what we currently do today.
Including the charter buses?
Well, so that's different. That's different than fares. So when it comes to service, service availability for students would be impacted as harshly as it would be for any other customer. So the extra service, what we refer to as our 400 series buses, is what you might refer to as a student charter. That would be affected by cuts. The extra service that we use to enhance the lines themselves that serve different schools, they would see cuts and reductions as well. We've tried very hard, very much to reduce the impact of the cuts in the first round of cuts, the 20% reduction. But once we start to cut deep, like we are proposing, it's very difficult to maintain any real semblance of frequent service for anyone, including students.
Okay.
But certainly that is not what we want to do. We want to provide the same levels of service, if not better, than what we're currently providing today. Chief, you want to take the next?
Sure. So I can tell you I'm a huge fan and proponent of the community evening resource centers. I mean, it's a tremendous tool for law enforcement in the city. I typically will bring that group in to discuss that program with my entire supervisory and leadership team at least once every year since I've been in charge of the police department over here. That's a tool that we can use to keep kids safe. Kids get caught up in these flash mobs. Like you said, we have folks getting in trouble, and it doesn't have to happen. We have a tremendous working relationship with our partners in the city. I want to take the opportunity at this point to really thank Commissioner Bethel and his team, particularly on their priority to bring back, the SEPTA checks and helping direct Philadelphia police officers check our SEPTA transit operators and things. I can tell you that through the first quarter of the year, they have performed more than 8,500 of those checks on SEPTA property. So that is a tremendous, tremendous help to us, and our employees certainly really appreciate that level of service. But we coordinate on those flash mobs frequently with sharing of intel and collaborate a lot with getting groups over to the search centers. I love that program. Office of Homeless Services, the director of our scope program, Teresa White, has a tremendous collaboration, coordination with them. They're in communication virtually every single week. As we bring back and remold our scope program, we're going to have even more close coordination with them. But right now, we're reliant on Office of Homeless Services and their homeless outreach contracts right now to kind of take over the slack that we lost in the suspensions of our contracts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Lady. Next up is Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the both of you, and thank you for everything that you do to keep Philadelphia moving, literally. This morning, Minority Whip Nicholas O'Rourke and I rode the L from 52nd Street to City Hall so that we could ask riders about their concerns and questions. I represent the only council district where a majority of residents do not drive to work. So for my communities in West and Southwest Philadelphia, riding SEPTA is not an option, it's a necessity. Something we often hear from Senate Republicans is that their taxpayers should not pay for SEPTA because they incorrectly claim their constituents do not benefit from it. These lawmakers are conveniently ignoring the fact that our region is only 5% of the state's land, but generates almost 40% of the Commonwealth's tax revenue. We know that Philly is the economic engine for the entire Commonwealth, so these Republican transit cuts would sink Philly's economy. But can you talk about how having reliable mass transit here in southeastern Pennsylvania supports economic activity in other regions of the state? Can you also talk about how much funding SEPTA receives from the Commonwealth versus other large transit systems in other states? So for instance, do you receive more or less than your peers? And lastly, given SEPTA's ongoing fiscal challenges, including significant budget shortfalls and limited state funding, how will trolley modernization be impacted in FY26?
So thank you for that. So let me discuss a little bit about the impacts on the state. So SEPTA, while SEPTA certainly operates in the 5 counties, parts of Delaware, parts of New Jersey, our reach across the Commonwealth is far and wide. The number of procurements, the things that we buy every day, whether it's wheels or it's just windshield wipers or cleaning products, we stretch into many of the counties in the Commonwealth. So while we may not, that person that lives in Butler County who's never taken a ride on a SEPTA bus, there may be a company in Butler County that we do business with that they are benefiting from the people that ride SEPTA every day. And I've made the same argument when in some interviews that I've done where I say, like, look, I've been to a lot of places, but I've never been to some of the counties in Pennsylvania. I've never ridden on their roads or ridden on their bridges, but I probably have contributed to their maintenance. And I don't begrudge anyone their road or their bridge that they need to have, but our people in this part of the Commonwealth, they need mass transit. We can't get around. And I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia, and I rode the 13 trolley to school and to work, my first job. So I did those things, and I wouldn't have been able to become the person I am without SEPTA. So, and I realize that our customers, by and large, are in the same situation that I was in many, many years ago. So, so the impacts that stretch across the Commonwealth, while they may not realize it, to the point where they don't see value in SEPTA, they will see the value if we don't exist. And then they will see the value.
I think we should outline that for the Republicans.
I agree with you. And to allay any concern that council may have about my involvement in this process, I have been front and center to anyone who will listen to me in Harrisburg and elsewhere. Myself trying to lead the way as the leader of this organization, as a leader in this community. I want people to see my face when they think about whether or not SEPTA needs to be funded and hear my voice. So I assure council that I am front and center on this issue everywhere I go. I'll bounce as it compares to our peers. Our funding for peers. We are actually amongst the lowest in the country when it comes to funding as compared to the largest transit agencies in the country. We have a chart that I can certainly share with council, but there's a chart that we use to kind of talk about this that we didn't even create. It was actually created by Chicago Transit Authority to make their case for being underfunded, and we were worse than they were. Wow. So they did us a favor by creating a chart where they ranked third from the bottom, but we were at the bottom.
And how long was the list?
That was a list of about 8 to 10 large transit agencies in the country. The highest being Seattle. They had the highest. And it's really like Seattle, for example, is building a transit agency to look like what we are today. We have it. They're spending billions of dollars to create what we have. We don't need billions of dollars to create this system. We exist. We exist on infrastructure that exists today, and we need help. We need the legislature to own SEPTA because we are a product of the legislature. As for trolley modernization, the trolley modernization project is still progressing. The cars are in design with Alstom. And so we are hoping to have a mock-up of the car that we can display as part of 2026 when the time comes. that we can show our customers what this car will look like in real life. They'll be able to kind of touch and sit in it. But the car is progressing. We are fully, our critical path items that we need to bring the cars onto the property is fully funded. So that includes our Route 36, when we will now refer to as T5. That line is fully funded so that we can get that line in operation. We can get the cars out on the road to begin testing once they arrive, which is still a couple years away. But trolley modernization is still moving forward. I'm sorry, was there another question?
That was it. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Lady. Next is Councilman O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the hard work that you all put in every day to maintain our city's lifeline. I want to start by talking about the Zero Fare program, the lauded Zero Fare program. Mayor's office has announced that the plan to continue the SEPTA Key Advantage for city employees, which is great news, and is, quote, in discussion with SEPTA to extend the Zero Fare program through FY26. Many of us are happy to hear that Zero Fare is safe for another year. We have heard it across the city, we have heard it certainly here, and so that is exciting news. I do have a few questions about this, though. Could you share more about where those discussions stand currently? Will Zero Fare actually be funded at current levels through the end of FY26?
So that is the commitment that we continue Zero Fare as it is today. So the same program with no additional limitations. We are still working out what that looks like with the administration, but SEPTA is supportive of the program. We have no objection to moving the program forward. In fact, we saw the value in it immediately. So that it had a goal of about 25,000 users. It met that goal. So we're excited that the administration wants to continue it, and we're eager to kind of nail down what it's going to look like.
So the discussions continue as it relates to
Yes,
what that looks like.
that's correct.
What we've been told is that the funding plan for Zero Fare in FY26 is to take funds already committed to SEPTA and restructure them to pay for the program. If I'm understanding this correctly, the city actually increased its subsidy to SEPTA by about $15 million in FY24, and that we're essentially restructuring that extra $15 million to fund Zero Fare. Can you confirm that this is correct?
So what the administration did is they overmatched their commitment to SEPTA, and what they did is they based their matching funds on what the governor's proposal was for SEPTA, not what we actually received. So in essence, they have paid us more than they were obligated to pay because they committed to the proposal that the governor made. So they're ahead of the game as it stands today, and they are considering using those funds to fund the Zero Fare program.
Okay. And still, and I heard the bell, so I'm gonna get off the clock, but to make sure I have this straight, we are going to be using funding that we were already planning to give to SEPTA and restructuring that so to also pay for the administrative overhead for the Zero Fare program. Wouldn't that mean, if that's the case, wouldn't that mean that SEPTA is actually receiving less money now as a result?
Not yet. The governor's proposal is not passed.
Okay.
So not yet.
I'll come back in the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Harity.
Thank you, Deputy Whip. Hello, how is everybody doing today? I'd like to get a little bit more into the scope so I can understand, because I actually am a fan of the program. I have examples here where people have gotten into Marquee and have been successful, one for 8 months already and one for 5. So, but what I would like to get into is, you said that they were, the contracts were paused, right? Because of the Inspector General's report. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more and kind of tell us some of what the report showed? Because from what I understand, it was that there may have been a little bit of padding going on with the numbers and how many people they actually service compared to what the number really was. So could you please just get into that a little bit for us?
Sure, and just let me also be clear, we're a fan of the program as well. It has been an enormous success for us in being able to reach people in a non-law enforcement way to get them the help that they so need. So what I want to kind of try to clarify a little bit is the Inspector General's report. So there's still discussions going on. So the way the Inspector General measured contacts with folks who need help may not have been crystal clear into what that, and you probably know this better even than I do. So making contact with someone who is in need is a process that these outreach specialists have to earn the trust of the people that they're trying to offer help to. So contact with someone in this regard may look like a lot of different things. It's not just direct physical or verbal contact with that person. It could just simply be being near them to give them the sense that this person is a friendly. So I think that there are some things that we still have to hash out as to what an engagement looks like. But by and large, what we've done for SEPTA is we're going to own this. And the chief alluded to this, that we're going to add supervisory personnel of our own from our roles that will take some ownership of supervising the outreach specialists, making sure that whatever is being reported is 100% accurate, something we can verify, so that should we look into this again at a later date, we all agree on what a contact is and how to measure it. I don't want to in any way mislead anyone that we weren't concerned about it. We were, which is why we paused operations. We want to make sure that we have this set up in such a way that people can't question it as something that's not productive. So Merritt-Key is still on board. Northeast Treatment, we separated ways before the report was issued, but the pause was just at an abundance of caution to make sure that we have our act together before we re-engage.
Are there still investigations going on as
No.
related to this?
Just at this point, I wouldn't term it as an investigation. It's conversations around the report on the investigation.
So what you're saying is what they were trying to get at is trying to make it clearer of what a contact actually is like, so that they couldn't just say if they gave them water that
Correct.
that was a contact.
If we report 50 contacts, we want to make sure we made 50 contacts.
So do we. So I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm a fan of the program. I have talked to numerous, I'm in recovery. I'm open about it. I've talked to people in the program that have gotten in. Actually, I couldn't believe it through your program and Merritt-Key. So I was a little concerned when I heard the report about the Inspector General and some other things going on and wanted to try to get some clarification. So I thank you on that, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on not just you guys for the program continuing, but also the people providing the service so that we know that the service is being provided. That's important.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Lozada, but before you go, I do have a couple of questions that I want to put before SEPTA before we leave today. That is, I would like a list of, in the last 2 years, how many FASOs, the Finding a Special Opportunity, that SEPTA has done, how many of these deals, how much were the contracts, to whom did they go to, and were there minorities/women who were a part of these transactions, and the length of the leases.
We'll get that for you.
Today, can we have it today before we wrap this up?
Yes, we will try our best to
Super.
get that
Thank you
for
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lozada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Let me start off by saying that I appreciate everything that you all have done to try to figure out how to make the system cleaner and safer. I'm baffled, though, because we still have a long way to go. And so my question is, I don't have to tell you what the issues are in the transit stops along the 7th Council District. You know what they are, you're familiar with them. My question is, now that Mr. Divers has retired, how do you all plan to manage the safety and the cleanliness and the removal of some of our unsheltered population on our systems? He was the point of contact, right? And it didn't matter if we called him on a Sunday morning or a Friday late evening, he was responsive. It can't be Wendy. It can't be Wendy. Wendy is one person, right? And so who is your outreach person? How do we respond to this? I have staffers who use the transit system every day, and every morning is a different story about someone lighting up a crack pipe next to their children, right? With no response from SEPTA, police, even after multiple reports. And so I need to figure out, we're preparing for 2026, and we're saying that we're gonna be ready. We're not ready now for our own residents. So what are you gonna do? How do we respond? Who's the point of contact person?
So you're right, Ken Divers has retired. His second in command is now the interim director of our SCOPE program. If you don't have her information, we'll make sure that you get it. So she's available anytime that you need her. You can always reach out to me. I'll address anything that needs to occur over. I do want to share, I mean, we've made significant progress through the Kensington corridor. And so, I mean, across every measuring statistic that we're measuring, crime is down, cleanliness is up, engagements are up, enforcement is up more than 200%, through that corridor. We're doing more collaboration with the city than we ever have. And I absolutely agree that a lot more needs to be done, right? Like, this is an issue. It's one of those issues that SEPTA and that our police department cannot solve alone. I can't create more housing opportunity. I can't get people clean myself, so we need to work through other individuals in that. Teresa is a tremendous support for me. I talked about embedding the SCOPE program within the police department. She's a member of my command staff now. She has not only the resources that she has in the SCOPE program, she has availability of the entire resources of the police department at her disposal.
So to some people in this legislative body, those numbers matter. But to me, what matters most is the people that are using the system, right? And my community is telling me that it is not reliable, that it is not safe, and that it is not clean. And so I can connect with you, I can call you, but what do my residents who, some people depend on the system to work, like my colleague has mentioned. My residents depend on it to survive, right? Because they don't have the luxury of vehicles. And so I need to know, that when they're using that app, that somebody's gonna respond. We see officers up on that platform, and people are evading paying, and they're just standing there, right? People are openly injecting themselves on the steps of our SEPTA stations, and there's officers at the foot of the steps, and they're just watching. And so I need some real solutions. I need you to help me believe that, number one, visitors coming into our city in 2026 are not going to walk away seeing this in my community. And number two, that you are going to not have one Mr. Divers, but 3, 4, 5 of them, because that's what we know we need, right? And the problems are not just in my district. While my district is ground zero for these problems, I'm sure on 52nd Street, 54th Street, all of these other stations have the same problem. And so we need more Mr. Divers and more serious concrete solutions to how are we going to do this? What do we do? How do you better partner with the police department? How do you better partner with offices like mine? How do we put real solutions in the hands of residents that depend on the system? Because I'm not hearing that. I didn't read it in your testimony, and we talk a lot, and yeah, it all sounds amazing, but I don't see us making progress in my district.
So, what I can commit to at this point is we have Teresa, who took Ken Diver's place. We are adding supervisors, as we mentioned, to this program. So we are multiplying the force that could be available. But I certainly would like to I'd like to figure out what else is needed. We've thrown a lot of resources at our cleaning operation. I realize that may not be completely visible to you in your district. So I'd like to figure out what else is necessary that I can really make an impact. I heard you on Monday, you talked about this very same issue as for 2026, that you don't want to be a viral video. I don't want that for you either. I don't want that for this city. So if there's a way that we can collaborate in a more meaningful way than we have been, then I'm open to it. I'm open to figuring out precisely what it is that your constituents need to feel safe riding SEPTA, because that's what we want. We have a number of initiatives underway to combat fare evasion. We can certainly talk through that when the time is right. But specifically to your concerns, there's got to be a way now that we can battle this together, and I'm willing to do that.
How many of your, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, how many of your, I don't know your board, right? How many of your board members are professional transit folks?
Well,
like
our board-
understand transit, can speak to transit, can come up with policy around transit, can create recommendations around transit. How many of your board members are prepared for that?
I mean, our board is a very engaged and professional board. I would say that there's a mix of professions on the board.
I want to know transit specific, and this is why I'm asking this. There is no way that the decisions that have been made up to now are being made by people who understand transit-oriented policies, legislation, conversation, fundraising. Like, I can't I'm not a transit person, and so I'm just trying to figure out, who do you have guiding you in this process?
I would say my board has been instrumental in guiding me up to this point. I've been in the job just a few months, and they have been a big help to me. Like I said, there's a variety of professions that I can lean on, from professional engineers to lawyers. It's a mix. I wouldn't say I like in myself and my team, the team that works around me. We are the professional transit professionals. The board gives me guidance and helps me make good decisions, and I feel like I've been that.
I don't doubt that, and
Yeah.
I'm not putting your board
Yeah.
down. I'm not saying that they're not good
Yeah.
people. I'm just saying that have a foundation in transportation, that has a foundation in transit-oriented policy.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to their complete backgrounds. I know what their professions are.
I get it.
But I would have to defer that question to someone on the board.
Then I think that's what we need to look at. That's what we need to look at,
Yeah.
right? It's good that that they are professional, and that they're good people, and that they're committed, and they believe in transit systems. I get it. But if they don't have the knowledge, it's almost like me walking in and being on your board and telling you what you need to do in a transit system when I have no clue what it even takes, right? And so I'm just going to recommend that we just look at that, because I think it's common sense, right? Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not trying to start no trouble. I'm not trying to start no trouble. I'm just saying, right, y'all asking me, it's like me telling you what to do, and I have no idea, because my major was in HR and in management, right?
So, good afternoon, Councilmember Lozada.
Good
I'm Mike
afternoon.
Carroll, Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation and Infrastructure here at the city, and I'm also a SEPTA board member. So I can't answer your question much more specifically than Scott has. There's a couple of us who have transportation backgrounds. There's a few who work in law related to issues that are directly connected to SEPTA's work, so labor, for example, risk and liability, for example. So there's a breadth of professional expertise the board provides. I think, the best way for us to kind of get you the comfort that I think you need is for the board to reach out to council members such as yourself and council members in general. There's a decent amount of engagement with council president, but we can expand that and you can get to meet these folks and have some FaceTime with them and share some of your concerns and get some of their feedback. I will say that coming out of the pandemic, the board has tried to articulate a message which I think Scott, the interim general manager has really picked up on, that there's a need for constantly elevating the sense of customers and workers' safety and security. And I have been asked to lead a subcommittee that focuses on safety in particular, specifically as the operation is one that has a lot of hazards associated with it, a little bit less on the customer side. But there's also an emphasis on accountability. And I think the general manager has put a ton of focus on accountability. And that is about building a culture in the organization, given that, the people who work for SEPTA, like everybody else in the region, has been through a lot in the last few years. And these are our residents. They're not people who appear from Mars and run trains and buses and, they're just kind of showing up out of thin air. They live in our neighborhoods. They work here, they shop here, their kids go to school here, so they have an investment, but trying to raise that culture is something that the board is focused on, and I think it would be very healthy for the board to share insights and ideas with council members in order to get that perspective that I think you're getting at.
I think that would be great, and I would appreciate that. However, again, right, we're saying that we're in a critical, and Madam Chair, I know that I'm over time, but we're in a critical situation right now, where we're talking about, I think I read 50 lines going to be cut by 2026, and we're talking about in the same year where we're having a ton of people coming into our city, and we're talking about relying on public transportation, right? And so we have to at some point become a common sense government, right? And we need people leading conversations that are prepared to lead those conversations in a very effective, responsible way. The transit system needs to be clean, it needs to be safe, it needs to be reliable. And if that means I'm going to focus just on the Market Frankfurt line right now, and I'm going to give it 100% and make it reliable and make it clean and make it safe, you have to do that before I decide that I'm going to use your system. It can't be the other way around, right? You can't continue to cut, be less reliable, and then expect me to want to use you. We have to do this the other way. And so I'm just saying we need to figure it out.
I appreciate
Madam
that.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Lady, and I agree with you 1,000%, because if we're having this, very difficult conversation about cuts to SEPTA and about, who's going to lose service and, what's going to be drawn back, and, it's going to dramatically affect the entire city of Philadelphia. And so when we make decisions, going back to, my concern earlier about giving away, 5 very valuable properties for $1 for 100 years. When we make a decision like that, it really kind of like makes you scratch your head and say, who is making these kinds of decisions that are affecting all of us? It's not just, a group of people, it's affecting the entire city of Philadelphia. And when we don't have the right professionals on the boards, or connected and making decisions at SEPTA, again, it affects us all, and it's very much of concern. Any information available yet on those demographics?
We are getting it, Councilmember.
Okay. And one other question on the bus revolution. I think you mentioned to Councilwoman, Majority Leader Kathy Gilmore Richardson, I think it was her that asked about it, and you said part of it was paused?
So the entire new bus network is paused pending the outcome of our funding situation.
So what does that mean?
So the reason why that is, so we can't move forward with implementation when we're talking simultaneously about stripping service away. So new bus network was not a reduction in service. It was to take our existing resources and make them more efficient and more useful to our customers, to create, in fact, more frequency and more reliability for customers. We would have to do we are going to have to do a communications campaign to educate our customers on what this new bus network is going to look like.
Right.
We could have that conversation at the same time we're talking about stripping away up to 50 bus routes.
How much have we spent on the bus revolution so far?
Well, so what we've spent so far, and I don't have the precise figure, but it would have been really consultant and staff time up to this point because it is generally resource neutral. So I will have to get you that figure.
And the other question I have on the bus revolution is that when we changed bus routes and bus numbers and names and all that, we were told it was because it was confusing. And so I'm trying to find out what the confusion was.
So I think more so than it's confusing. So it certainly wouldn't be confusing to locals. Because the people like you and I who've been here for our entire life, we know what the G is.
Correct.
Right? But what we were trying to do with the new nomenclature is to create a system that is good and understandable for locals and visitors alike, both the frequent and the infrequent user. So as we shifted and we adopted a letter naming system, naming convention for our rail lines, we are making sure that all the bus routes take a numerical naming convention. So of the 6 or 7 bus routes that were remaining that still had letters, we shifted almost all of them to numbers to coincide with the other 115 or so bus routes that are also numbers. That was to give it more consistency across mode.
So if we made a decision to make that sort of a change, to change letters to numbers so that it would be more understandable for people who are not from Philadelphia, for visitors. So we essentially made these changes to make it easier for visitors to understand rather than the people who ride and pay for SEPTA every single day and who take this transit. Because for the life of me, I just don't understand what was confusing about our system, especially when, like the XH, the H, the R, like all of these bus routes, even from back in the day, the C bus, right? SEPTA changed the C bus. You know what people still call it, the C bus?
The C bus.
And so who are we making these changes for?
And again, so just to give some historical perspective, the C bus changed, and yes, there are still some leftovers who still call it the C bus. People like us.
Everybody calls it the C bus.
There are still people who refer to our regional rail lines as the R5, R4, R3 rather. So traditions die hard sometimes. But at the same time, I can also remember bus routes. I remember bus routes because I've been here so long that other people don't recall because it has changed, and now everybody knows the new. So it's not just new just for the sake of being new, and it wasn't just intended for the visitor. It was just meant to make sure it was consistent that this mode was treated this way. The bus mode was treated this way, the rail mode is treated this way. The same way we now refer to our transit rail lines as our metro. It's just, it feels new, and the newness makes it feel confusing, but in time, people will grow accustomed to the new nomenclature. Some won't, but many will, and the new folks who come in, who enter the system, whether they're now children or infants growing into the system, or they're visitors, or people relocating into the city, they won't know it any other way.
I hear you. I think that, and I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think that whatever time and resources we spent on this could have better been used to try to figure out the financial situation of SEPTA rather than changing the R to the, Route 49 or, like whatever it is.
Understood.
I just don't think that that was probably the best use of our time and talent and treasury, for SEPTA or for its riding public. Because if we're making all these changes and the idea is to make someone who visits Philadelphia once a year, at the expense and the, confusion of those who have been riding SEPTA for a lifetime, it just doesn't make sense. But like I said, I don't want to belabor that. Chair recognizes Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bass. SEPTA, just a couple of questions. SEPTA has capital projects that they're responsible for. In our district, 2 capital projects that SEPTA is responsible for include the Fern Rock district. There was supposed to be an underpass or overpass. Lawndale, there's supposed to be a new overpass or underpass. And there has been community conversations about this for way before I even started. When I first started on council, I had meetings about this in 2022, and now it's 2025. And then to learn that former Councilwoman Sherelle Parker had projects with that were slated to be working, her office and so forth. We're now going close to, it's about 6 years now, it looks like, and the capital project still has not started. To me, it's disappointing because I look up and I'm like, oh, are we moving on it? And nothing's moving. But it's more disappointing to a community that SEPTA continues to engage about this and there's no construction happening. So even before the death spiral, there was funding that was earmarked for capital projects in our district, and I'm trying to figure out what is the status of those type of capital projects, and is SEPTA becoming more like Rebuild Philadelphia in our Parks and Rec, where they're constantly not finishing capital projects. Thankfully, Rebuild is getting stuff done now, but before they weren't. It looks like SEPTA is doing the same model.
Sure, and let me speak to those 2 projects in particular, and then I'll talk a little bit about the capital program generally. So both Fern Rock and Lawndale are both in consideration for executing the project. Fern Rock has been particularly challenging because the solution is not apparent. There was discussions about a crossover. There were discussions about an underpass. The engineering associated with both options, and the underpass does not seem like a viable option. But certainly the overpass, the engineering associated with that, doesn't present an easy remedy for that location to be able to do this project. That's not to say that it wouldn't ever happen, but there's still a lot more that has to be done before we get to a real viable solution for Fern Rock. Lawndale is a little bit different. While we had an engineered project, the funding was not there. So we had applied for a grant from the Federal Railroad Administration. It didn't come. It's still on the books as a project that we want to execute. It's just the funding just has not presented itself for that project. It had never been funded, at least during the time that I've been paying attention to the project. But more broadly, our capital program is sorely underfunded. We still have a $5 billion backlog of state of good repair. We have a $17 billion 12-year program that we can only fund about $14 billion of, which includes trolley modernization, station accessibility, rail car replacements. We still have the oldest rail car fleet in the country, and our 50-year-old Silverliners are unfunded to be replaced. So we would love to build anything that will make our customers' experience better. We want to make our stations fully accessible. That's a priority for the organization. We've had to delay a couple station accessibility projects because we just don't have the funding to move forward. Now, there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, we don't get the funding levels, as Councilmember Gautier pointed out, we don't get the funding levels that our peers do. But just as important, inflation has taken a bite out of our capital budget as well. Yeah. So there's a number of reasons why these projects don't always get started. Those are just a couple.
But Scott, I understand that, but it's the process, right?
Yes.
The community is not understanding, neighbors understand if you're going to take our time, bring us out to meetings on multiple occasions. And then we do know that there's a grant that's pending. It's like, why even put us through that until you have all your marbles in the book? Right now, that entire community engagement team, in my mind, has literally had meetings in our district over and over again with nothing to show for it at this point. And it's disappointing not only to myself, but to our neighbors. So I just think our process just has to get better with the capital project side. And not only that, the follow-up is not really good either. Because even after a meeting, there's not like, hey, we're gonna be getting here, we're still in design, So it's just the process that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and as your colleagues have pointed out in other aspects of the way we do business, we do have to do better at communicating with you, with your constituents, with the people of the region, and our processes internally for evaluating these projects as they're presented to us has to improve as well. Yeah. We have to, and all those things are in motion. I want to assure the council that those things are happening. We've just in the few months that I've been general manager, we've already put in a number of processes to try to, number one, right-size our capital program, and then secondly, make sure that we have a process for selecting projects before we come to the community and ask them for their approval and their input.
Yes, have the funding ready and to go, and have a process of when we're going to finally say, we got to make it time, especially with the Firm Rock one. Just the last question. The bus operators and the railroad operators, the operator, they are your number one staff people. I'm thinking about their safety as operators. And one of the things I'm thinking about is that the ongoing number of young people who, they're young, things happen, they get on the bus after school, and they also get on the bus during the regional rail, they get on regional rails, the train, the subway. Is there a way in which this budget could potentially reflect people that could be supportive of the bus operators during this time, helping to communicate with schools? There's traditional bus stops that all of the young people congregate at. We could have people out there as a safety precaution helping to funnel in kids into those buses, only up certain limits and so forth. And I'm just thinking about also having a police department, school, except the police, always around during those let-out times. I feel like they're just there. And then they could be there could be people that could be hired just to help de-escalate the congregation that is at the traditional spaces. Are we thinking more innovatively about how to help to make sure that we're not having too many kids on buses, too many kids on trains, but also helping to de-escalate situations, having staff members work on that from SEPTA too as part of the safety project?
So I think COVID kind of really put us behind the eight ball in this, in that the number of operators that we had on the street were fewer and far between, which meant service was impacted, which meant more people getting on buses. I think a couple of the programs that we implement now, it's like I think about school trip programs where we're communicating directly with the schools and providing tripper service directly from a school to a particular transportation center. I think that helps. Our collaboration with the city is fantastic with sort of problem hotspot locations. We kind of know where they are. We do supply police officers off of the line and out at these hotspot locations, particularly where we know there's been historical problems. We're tracking that as new hotspots come online. I think all of this is going to be alleviated as our staffing gets better, and our service count gets better, and the number of fleet vehicles get better.
Are you in constant communication with school principals and leaders about needs at bus stops? Because that could be really helpful.
We do. So I have my commanders, essentially it's similar to district level commanders, all have school safety meetings that they attend. We have a tremendous working relationship with school police. So we're communicating every week when school's in service with school police as well.
All right, thank you. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you. Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. Could you talk to us about, if the level of funding you're seeking from the state doesn't come through, how will you utilize the stabilization fund in order to keep SEPTA afloat? Can you talk to us about what that fund is?
Sure, thank you. Yes, so the Service Stabilization Fund has had many names over the years, none of which are completely accurate. The Service Stabilization Fund is its proper name. And what it is really in reality is a working capital fund. So we use that fund every single day to do business. We pay our contractors for capital projects. We pay salaries. We pay for a variety of procurements and other needs out of this fund. So the value of the fund fluctuates from throughout the year. It reaches its highest point typically on the last day of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. As it stands today, the fund sits at just over $200 million. We will dip into that fund for about $113 million to close the remainder of the fiscal 26 budget after all the cuts are made. So even though it's a $213 million deficit, we will cut the 45%, we will raise the fares, and then we will still dip into the fund for $113 million to close out the remaining gap. What that does is it relieves us with less than a month's operating expenses left to conduct daily business. And what that could eventually lead to, if we exhaust that fund, is we would then start using debt to pay for things, much like anyone else might use debt when they run out of money, which will incur higher fees, higher charges for us to do business, in addition to the rising costs that we already deal with. So the stabilization fund has been mischaracterized as a rainy day fund or an emergency fund, something that just kind of sits off in the bank somewhere and waits for us to use it. That's not at all what it is. We use it every day.
Thank you. And you do business in a lot of counties in the state. Have you, or what type of effort have you made with those contractors you have to help you leverage their legislators in that part of the state?
Yeah, so we have engaged with all of our vendors and contractors and consultants to let them know that should SEPTA have to enact this budget, that they would in turn see reductions in us being able to execute contracts with them. We've encouraged them to reach out to their legislators. We've even shared this information directly with legislators who represent these districts or these counties, so that they are aware that while we may spend $5 million in your county today, we cut half the budget and we cut half the workforce, that $5 million could be zero. It could be a little bit more, but likely would be zero. So we have encouraged all of our vendors to engage. We've put them on notice as to what could happen, as the same is true of their representatives as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dr. Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you all for being here. Congratulations on your appointment. I wanted to ask about your board composition. So Philadelphia is expected to contribute about $135 million, while our surrounding counties are asked for about $30 million combined. While there might be some discrepancy around who actually utilizes SEPTA the most, city residents or suburbanites, the rationale for the city's disproportionate investment into the authority is that the city stands to benefit from a fully funded operational SEPTA service. However, the 10 county-appointed SEPTA boards, only 2 are from the city, and our suburban neighbors have overwhelmingly more collective representation than the city has. Has SEPTA ever seriously considered a reconstruction of its board so it is reflective of the central role the city plays in its operations and strategic planning? We contribute the most to the authority because we ostensibly have most to gain. However, we have totally unequal representation at the highest levels of decision-making within the authority.
So I'll take this one on, and I just wanted to jump in because those questions are not questions that the general manager or the staff or leadership of SEPTA really are involved in at all. The fundamental reason why the board is structured the way it is because of the authorizing legislation, which is state legislation. And since the state of Pennsylvania set up SEPTA, that's how they define the board structure. There are conversations individual board members have about what the appropriate structure would be, but the board itself doesn't even have the power to reconstitute its representation. That would have to be done by the state legislature.
So in that vein, I would really appreciate when the lobbying is done with our state legislature to actually highlight the disproportional, participation that is, that we do from Philadelphia, and the fact that, we are helping keep this afloat at a great cost to us when we are one of the poorest big cities in the country. The second thing I wanted to ask about the board was about my colleague Ketsi Lozada asked about people with experience about transportation planning. My question is about development, because we just heard about the 99-year leases without any sharing of revenue potentially, which we'll get more information. But that's a solid pathway for us to be able to amplify. And I wanted to know who on the board has and is maybe giving you support on that issue and how these deals were structured. And then finally, the final lead-up question is that when we have this type of authority, doing this kind of work, we need to make that value proposition to the state about what is our actual investment from Philadelphia, not just direct, but indirect, and what is it doing for the entire state. We need like a graphic to show that. So I'll take your answers. Thank you, Council President. Well, I'll just listen to the answers.
So, it was mentioned earlier that we have a board subcommittee that advises us on safety and security. We also have a similar board subcommittee that advises us on real estate transactions. So the makeup of that subcommittee is there's a variety of board members that are either assigned to or attend. The chairperson of that committee is Commissioner Marian Moskowitz of Chester County. And then there are other board members, and we can certainly supply that list to you, but they advise us on real estate transactions.
And they were the people who authorized this 99-year leases that you did in Northwest Philadelphia?
The subcommittee doesn't authorize, they advise. The entirety of the board authorizes. They vote collectively, the 15 members.
Okay. I forgot what my other question was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the second
Long
part.
question. About a real graphic showing the state what is our investment in SEPTA.
We share that. 100% we share Philadelphia's investment in SEPTA versus the state investment versus the county investment. And I will say, in fairness to the counties, like Philadelphia, they have all committed their share, even like Philadelphia has, they have committed their share based on the governor's proposal. And so I didn't want to insinuate anything negative about the county commitment. They are committed to SEPTA as well, but certainly Philadelphia, because of its size, commits much more.
And so just to make the point to the governor and the legislature that what the revenue we generate for the rest of the state. That's a graphic we would like to have, because we can be advocates for all of you here.
Yes.
And then all the voters who live in Philadelphia, the largest county, who will determine the fate of statewide officers, is very important for us. So we would like that piece of information.
We have an economic impact analysis that we conducted based on the cuts that reveals that information. We'll make sure that you have that.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I remember with the competent Wendy going through the bus revolution. Did I say competent? Highly competent Wendy going through the bus revolution. And I warned at some of the hearings certain things that I'm going to repeat today. that every time we shorten a route, there's a senior that has to walk further. Every time we eliminate a route, there's a kid that has to navigate through neighborhoods that he may or may not know that cause him danger. Every time we change the names of a route, we tend to confuse people who know to catch this bus, to get that bus, to get to my doctors. So what I said in the bus revolution was, have we talked to institutions that deal with the University of Penn's of the world, the other large institutions that service those populations, school district, how this is going to impact them. And I understand it's a doomsday, and God knows that I know that there are people working at the state as we speak, trying to figure out where the quarters and the couch are to pay for this deficit. And you got a governor working for you, you got a state house working for you, and we need to work on the rest. You have a council that wants to work with you. But when you punish the people who are trying to help you, it just gives us a very bad taste in the mouth. If it's a kick in our butt to motivate us, we are motivated, trust us. But we cannot have people who work the night shift eliminated from work because they no longer have a means back and forth. Now, having said that, no good crisis, in Chinese they say the same word for crisis is the same word for opportunity. We should not waste this crisis because we should be revamping, tweaking where we can to make it more efficient. Example is when we went through the whole piece with the Sixers Arena. We should take that as an opportunity to see how we can help make successful trips from suburbanites who want to take public transportation down to the stadium, how to get express party L's buses from Fern Rock, from 69th Street, to be able to go there and have a Sixers mascot on there so that they can feel safe. We should be working with our state counterparts to say, where would they park at 69th Street? Where can they use the mall? We need to logistically put those things in place now so that we increase our ridership today. God help us if we actually get some help from the state. You are in a better position to more effectively plan for a better future for this system. In 2026, we're going to need you like at full strength, not at half strength, but we need to have these systems in place so that visitors can park at Fern Rock and ride in, park at 69th Street and be on a party-safe transit system and feel welcomed like I'm not going to go with New York or DC, but some of those other cities kind of have the perception that they have right. What I will agree with you wholeheartedly on, we do have the best veins and infrastructure of most transportation cities. Better than Denver, better than some of these other places that are trying to get to where you already are. And we just need to build on that.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And I like to tell a story how when I was in Ohio, Cleveland, it's part of an organization called City Year. And we had our synergy in Cleveland, Ohio. And they have Dear Delaware Waterfront is similar to Dear Delaware Riverfront would be called the Flats, right? And that's where we had our conference at. And we were all leaving in the evening and we missed our bus, right? Kurt, we're in the middle of nowhere, right? And it dawned on me how important SEPTA was, because that was the last bus. Like, there was no bus after that, right? Like, that was it, right? And it made me appreciate SEPTA because I'm from South Philly, and I got the Broad Street line, and we used to have the C, which y'all changed to another bus, but it's still the same bus on Broad Street. So I have the option to catch the bus or the sub, and then the 2 bus going north and south, and then on 19th Street and 20th Street to 17, which is the best bus route in the city, right? That's going from north and south, right? And then, I think we just eliminated, but we also had a bus on 23rd Street, which was the 7, right? And that's just going north and south, but that's just getting started. but also the 29 east and west, the 64 east and west. And so once I learned that I got left that night in Cleveland, it was
It's
dark
a whole
too.
nother
It
experience.
was dark too. It made me appreciate. So, you know, we're not gonna let these cuts happen.
So,
Not gonna happen.
so to the president's point, we have to defend your riders, and we will do so vigorously. We love Wendy, but that ain't gonna be enough to stop us.
We don't want you to stop, Councilman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. So I guess as we go into our next round, I got you, sir. Councilmember Thomas.
This is my first.
First?
Yep.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm gonna go rapid fire. Couple questions. Have you talked about the economic impact on the entire region? So have we communicated how much revenue we expect the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to lose if some of the recommendations from the governor are not adopted, and what is that specific amount?
So yes, we have, and we have an economic impact analysis that is on our website currently. We're sharing that with everybody. And what it costs in tax revenues alone is about $675 million.
So the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would lose about $675 million in tax revenue.
That's right. And that's direct tax revenue. This doesn't mean
Sure.
that it's not,
I
has to do
understand
with
exactly
property
what you're saying.
tax loss and all that other things.
I understand
that go
exactly
on
what you're
there.
saying.
Right.
Council President recommended earlier that you go to Harrisburg yourself. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I've already been 3 times. I got 3 more trips coming in the next couple of weeks. So yes, I have a place in Harrisburg now. Yes.
I'll volunteer to go up there with you one day as well.
I would love to
so
have
you're
you.
not going by yourself, so you can see members from Philadelphia, and I'll bet other members of City Council would also volunteer to go up with you, as well as advocates. I would recommend that we make it an entire Philadelphia initiative. I think the council president is important that they see you early and often, but I do want to volunteer to make sure that you have support systems and people have your back, so I'll put myself in that category. There's been a lot of advocacy on social media, but SEPTA's website, SEPTA's social media pages are not necessarily as active as, say, some of the council members who rode the L in today. Are there any plans, yes or no, to improve SEPTA's social media presence to help improve your advocacy efforts?
Yeah, I mean, our entire communications effort is improving. I think the effort we've made thus far has been a yeoman's work. This has been our concentration, so yes, but we do have to do more on social.
When I get on the train or the L and my bus is late or my train is late, or even if it's not gonna come, is there a way that I can just go to SEPTA's social media page to be able to get an update on what's happening with my particular means of transportation?
So the social media page isn't as helpful as our app is.
We need the social media page.
The social media page will help you in certain ways, but if you want specific information about your specific bus or your specific train, the app is the best bet. You can actually track the movement of the vehicle as it arrives to you.
So the reason that we need the social media page is because we're going to have a lot of people coming to Philadelphia. That you have a lot of corny people like me who just don't download apps. I don't download apps. I don't have Uber or any of those type of apps on my phone. I'm not an app person, so you can't expect people to adjust to you. We have to meet people where they are, so I'm going to ask that we find a way to allow social media to provide the same updates that apps do. My last thing, I want to say thank you to you. A special thank you to Wendy, the entire team at SEPTA. We appreciate you participating in the 2020 hearing as well as the other work that you do. SEPTA, 2 questions, and I won't come back for a second round. SEPTA, as far as marketing, how much revenue do you generate from people marketing on your buses and on your trains? How much revenue is that?
14 million.
How can you get that number up to 28 million? You can get us that answer in writing. I don't even want to put you on. I don't want to put you on the spot like that, but let's get a little more creative in marketing. I see you partner with people to be able to get naming rights to certain stations. We see marketing and advertising on buses, sometimes on the side, sometimes on the front. Let's see if you all can get creative in the next couple weeks before we pass a budget and come back to us on ways that you can increase the amount of revenue you get from marketing and selling naming rights and things of that capacity. Last but not least, I heard one of my colleagues bring up board members SEPTA board members. How many SEPTA board members are Philadelphia residents who've been approved by Philadelphia elected officials to serve as board members?
There are 2 Philadelphia representatives on the SEPTA board.
And how many total people are on the board?
There are 15 total.
So 13 out of the 15 people on the board are not Philadelphia residents, and if I'm not mistaken, 15 out of 15 were not confirmed by anybody in Philadelphia, correct?
I can't speak to the resident, because there are those that are appointed by the state legislature.
All of them are appointed and approved by the state, right?
No, well, no, Philadelphia appoints its 2 representatives. but
2, right?
Yes.
Right.
But the state legislature, House and Senate, appoint their own representatives, some of whom may be Philadelphia residents. I
Sure.
don't know that. I don't know
Okay,
that.
so when you go to Harrisburg, and I'm wrapping up right here, Council President, when you go to Harrisburg and you advocate for SEPTA funding, is there any consistent reminder that the people who are on the board were appointed by them and that they should be the primary funders for SEPTA because they appointed the board members, they have jurisdiction, they are constitutionally responsible for funding SEPTA? Is that ever a conversation up there?
I can honestly say, council member, our board is very active in this fight. They have accompanied me.
Can I do a point of information?
Sure.
Just for clarity on the process, and just coming from me working up there, and I'm sure Driscoll can attest, half of it, of this argument is preaching to the choir, right? And a lot of the ones who are blocking us aren't so much from the board, it's more so Republicans from across the state of Pennsylvania that no matter what we do, so you'll get a Republican from Bucks County to be supportive of our efforts, but you won't get that Republican from Allegheny County to be supportive of our efforts. Just wanted to clarify it just in terms of the process, but Member Thomas still wants his answer, so make sure you respond to him. But I just want to clarify it because I know the dynamics of what we're dealing with. Member Thomas?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So-
I just think, and I think it's more of a rhetorical thing, I just think it's somewhat hypocritical for a legislative branch of government to have appointed authority over any type of institution, but then not own the responsibility of funding it, right? I think that that's so hypocritical, and I think it's very disappointing that we've moved to a space and a place where something like SEPTA, which should be a bipartisan issue, right? It's not like you have to show your registration when you get on SEPTA and only Democrats can ride SEPTA. Everyone rides SEPTA. And it's unfortunate that this has turned into such a partisan issue, especially when those same people who Council President is saying they have a history of blocking the funding are the same people who vote for and appoint the governing body that's in charge of this large transportation. Go ahead, President, Council
Yeah, I
President.
just wanted to be clear, just in terms of transparency and how that process works. The people who are actually blocking don't lose SEPTA. The people who have the power right now, who's not passing the 3 bills that came out of the House or the General Assembly to get passed, they can care less about the city of Philadelphia because they focus on bridges and roads. That's their interest because SEPTA doesn't have an impact on the immediate community. And so that's where the power lies right now, and that's where the rub is in terms of trying to get them to be more supportive of our efforts. And so just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Thank you, Council President. So I'm hoping that when we go to Harrisburg, those same folks that the
Yes.
Council President is talking about will be the people who is on the top of our list to go visit. And I'm
Yes.
more than willing to have a respectful conversation along with you and other legislators to figure out what do we do to address this crisis. I'll submit the rest of my questions in writing, Council President.
Thank
you.
And also supporting Member Thomas in this approach, also with the support of the Chairman of Transportation, who's a former member, Driscoll, who's well versed in this area. It's also going to take, and I'm sure you know this already, Scott, right? When I talk about working in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and so having a real conversation, the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce doesn't just represent Philadelphia. Majority of members come from the surrounding regions. They have a strong Republican contingency that's a part of the chamber. And so I've seen things move as a former member when need be, when the other side of the aisle actually go to Harrisburg and make this actual priority. I've seen them stop things from happening when they want to make things a certain priority. And so we have to be very, very strategic and pragmatic, but also speak truth to power, making sure those who have a vested interest aren't just doing rallies, because the rallies are cute and come out, hey, let's go. But the reality is, how are you actually getting it done? And a lot of it is behind the scenes, having direct conversations, pushing and pulling, and at the same time, strategically getting people to get to be where you need to be in terms of really supporting Governor Shapiro's budget that he's put forth with $300 million. How much will come to the city of Philadelphia?
About 168 million.
And 168 million. And we've passed how many bills out of the General Assembly to the Senate, which they have never supported? How many?
3.
3. And so there lies the politics that we have to address in terms of making sure that we support SEPTA. The chair recognizes Councilmember Ketty Lozada for a point of information.
Just a point of information, I want to be clear, right? I'm not downing the people of SEPTA's board, or I'm not saying that they're not professional or supportive of you. I think that the point that I'm trying to drive is that if people who are not well-versed and prepared and understand the transit system and everything that comes with it to be able to make effective, responsible decisions for it, it can get us to where we are right now, right? And so just want to make sure that that's really what I'm pushing, is that we may have amazing people on SEPTA, they just may not be capable of making transit-oriented decisions, and that is why we are where we are.
Okay. Well, I have confidence in the chair, a gentleman by the name of Ken Lawrence. He's a Fells University of Pennsylvania graduate, along with myself, part of Fells alumni group who's taking the helm now. And so we'll be supporting Chairman Ken Lawrence as he advocate in Harrisburg and make sure that we save SEPTA, but most importantly address the crisis that's before us. And I'm pretty confident with this legislative body, who's always stepping up to the plate, and us working in partnership with our legislators in Harrisburg, that we will save SEPTA. I think 2026 will come. I believe we will be in a good place. So I have to speak it into existence, and we're going to do the hard work to make sure that's going to happen. Not under my watch, none of this body's watch, that SEPTA is going to not be supported. And so we stand on that. The chair recognizes Councilman Jamie Gauthier, then Councilmember Bass, then Councilmember O'Rourke, who will wrap us up.
Thank you, Council President. I appreciated the exchange just now with Councilmember Thomas about the different ways that City Council can support you at the state level. I wanted you to expound on how SEPTA is coordinating with the city to advocate effectively for sustained transit funding at the state or even the federal level, and how you want to be partnering with the city in order to do that. So for example, are there specific efforts or strategic partnerships underway in FY26 to secure additional resources or grants that would mitigate potential service disruptions or budget-driven service disruptions? I also wanted to hear from Board Member Mike Carroll about what's happening on the administration side. I know the mayor is a firm believer in intergovernmental partnerships, so I wanted you to talk about what the Parker administration is doing to lobby Harrisburg to fund SEPTA. Next, I wanted to know how much funding does the city of Philadelphia provide SEPTA as compared to our Cowler counties? How much service would be cut in the Cowler counties versus Philadelphia if SEPTA does not receive funding? And then lastly, how can residents support SEPTA's budget needs?
I am jotting down the questions. I'll speak to the city partnerships. I mean, certainly this body has been a great partner. I appreciate the rallies, the comment the council president had on the rallies, but I will say that the rally that was held out here last Friday, whether or not it makes inroads in Harrisburg or not, it meant something to SEPTA, it meant something to our employees and certainly our riders. So it means a lot. I have spoken with all of you on council, and you've all been very supportive and offered your advocacy. Your voices are so powerful in the region that just the fact when you use your social media platforms, when you use your speaking platforms to speak on behalf of SEPTA, it's a powerful message and it works for us. And anything that comes out of this body is a help to us. With regards to the administration, certainly one of our board members is a part of the administration, but I've had conversations myself with the mayor, and I've had conversations with her key staff. They have been very strong voices on behalf of SEPTA. Mayor Parker, of course, was up in Harrisburg herself during the governor's budget address, and she made it a point to talk to me and make sure that I knew that she was advocating on our behalf. So every opportunity I know that the mayor gets, she takes to advocate on behalf of SEPTA. As for additional funding sources and grant opportunities, there aren't many grant opportunities for operating dollars. It's more in the capital side, but we have a very active grant department that is always searching for opportunities for us. And of course, if there's anything that council is aware of that we should be looking at, we're certainly open to those ideas as well. Operating dollars are much more difficult to come by than capital as far as it comes to grant making. There was something for our board member. I did? What did I?
Yeah, General Manager gave you the main answer. And I'll just say that the issue is so important that the mayor's office has taken that advocacy on themselves and the mayor herself. And I will only add this. I mean, the mayor's often fond of, reminding people it's not what you say, it's what you do. And the fact that she has put the budget in for the second year in a row is really the main thing she wants everyone to be responding to when she goes to Harrisburg and asks the Commonwealth to step up to the plate and do that on their own.
Thank you. And then lastly, how can residents get involved in this advocacy? Oh, I'm sorry. Also, my question about the Cowler counties,
I have
please.
that as well. So as for the advocacy, our riders and our strongest advocates, they have taken up the mantle already. We have seen really powerful social media hits that have gotten the attention of our legislators. We know that firsthand because we've been contacted by them. So we know that the folks out there who are our strongest supporters are our customers. And as I've made my rounds through the legislature in Harrisburg, I was actually told on more than one occasion, we've heard enough from SEPTA. We're not hearing from your people. We're not hearing from your customers. So we took that, brought that back with us. I addressed the chamber. I addressed our advocates. We talked to our Citizens Advisory Committee, our Youth Advisory Committee, and they immediately picked up the torch and ran with it. So much so that they're getting the attention from our legislators in Harrisburg for sure. So the chamber themselves have been out. They've done a video campaign. They're doing town halls, digital campaigns. There's a number of activity that's going on with all of our now business partners, the community. It's really been amazing to see. Since Thursday alone, the budget announcement, it's really been active amongst our customers. The local subsidies by county, Philadelphia County represents 82.5% of our local subsidies. Delaware County is next at 8.1%, Montgomery at 5%, Bucks at 2.7, and Chester County at 1.6.
Would the service cuts be proportional, or would they differ by county?
So the first 20% service cuts were proportional, 20%. So it was 20. It amounted to about 20% in every county. Some ticked a point or two higher, some ticked a point or two lower, but generally it was 20% across the board. The 45% cut was a little bit different. The regional rail piece really made the difference. Actually, the outer counties are probably getting hit a little harder than because they're losing their regional rail service, as opposed to a lot of the city transit service that we still run in Philadelphia. It's not good either way. 45% cut's not a good cut no matter how we slice it, but certainly the Chester and Montgomery counties are getting hit pretty hard.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember O'Rourke and Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. This may sound young. Maybe it's because I'm an independent. I do believe that the time in history may vindicate the point, though. I appreciate the calls for generating your own money, doubling, your marketing fee. Everybody rides the transit, maybe make you pay a little bit more, raise your own dollars. not just the history, but the new normal is that we have an administration in the White House, and by proxy, a party that does not believe in rule of law, is not going to make any commitments to supporting things. But I think even more to the point, to the president's point, actually, this isn't really just a partisan issue, it's regional, more specifically. This effective cut in revenue, and the reason why I'm bringing up this point before I make this question, is that it seems to me, it's becoming clearer to me, that it may be a time where cities got to stand on their own. It's not exciting to hear, it's really frustrating, it shouldn't be that way. But it might be one of those situations where cities are gonna have to be holding their own and not have to worry about what other folks refuse to do, even when it benefits everybody. This cut in revenue for SEPTA comes at the same time that we understand SEPTA is facing a fiscal crisis with serious service cuts, curfews, rate hikes coming. We've talked about all that. While I believe that we should be doing everything we can to advocate for SEPTA funding at the state level, I want to invite Philly to expand its understanding on what it means to do its part to contribute locally. My team crunched some numbers recently from the U.S. Department of Transportation and realized that although the city recently increased our SEPTA subsidy contribution significantly, which we did, SEPTA still receives far less in local funding than most of its peer cities, not just the state, but even the cities themselves. Local funding represents about 9 to 10% of SEPTA's operating budget. You said 8% earlier from Philly, and the rest, I believe, from collar counties. But other cities contribute significantly more. New York contributes about 23%. Seattle contributes about 27%. Chicago contributes about 40%. LA, as a big town, they contribute about 50%, about half their budget of its transit's operating budget. Does this align with your understanding of our peer cities?
I'm going to say yes for both of us. Okay. Yeah, we've been looking at this research for a few years now, and under a previous board, some work went into identifying some ideas what we might do about it. And so those ideas culminated in a variety of revenue generating options for the 5-county region so that we could essentially provide more revenue for SEPTA as these competing metropolitan areas do. And that's basically what it boils down to. The reason why most of our peers are funding more at the local level is because they have revenue generation options at the metropolitan or county or city level that we don't have. Unfortunately, that is another issue which we've had a challenge working with the state legislature on. And so we would need authorization from the state in order to explore these revenue generation options. You know, whether we wanted to do them or not, even having the opportunity to do that requires state authorization. And we were not able to get a bill in front of the legislature, much less passed, in order to do that. So that's a question that we're interested in exploring further, just to understand what that might look like, just to explore what that might look like.
I heard the bill, so I'll let it go. It's just because the longer I'm in here, and it's been a short amount of time, and recognizing the times within which we live, I almost feel like we as a city gotta fail-proof ourselves. They won't even give it for education funding, and that's how many times do we have that conversation? So certainly something like transit. I just don't like the feeling of being at the mercy of people who are telling us to our face that they refuse to do the thing that makes the most sense for the widest spread of people. That having been said, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And wrapping us up will be Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we have that data?
I do.
Super. Can you let us know what you
Sure.
got?
So there are 3 FASOs that are either completed or underway, one that we've discussed. One is in Ambler, had to do with station joint development. That RFP is about to be released. That hasn't been executed yet. Conshohocken Station joint development opportunity, which was just awarded by the board in March, but a contract hasn't been executed yet. Prior to that, there were 2 unsuccessful FASOs. One was the 5-station lease that we spoke about earlier, was competitively bid in 2023, but it didn't get any bids. And then a 69th Street joint development opportunity back in 2018 that was not executed.
For the, okay, so do you have the information in terms of the demographic breakdown?
As far as costs?
As far as, right, as far as who
So the
was
Ambler,
being considered, who was applying, who
yeah,
was
so Ambler and
awarded?
Conshohocken haven't been executed yet, so there's no cost to speak of at this point.
Well, the demographic information too.
Beg your pardon?
Demographic information.
Oh, I'm sorry, the demographic information. So, well, demographic information I'll have to come back to you on. All I have is the FOSSOs themselves. I'd have to break out the demographics.
Yeah, it doesn't-
Both are regional rail stations, I might add, council member. They are Ambler and Conshohocken.
Okay, we really need that information.
I will do that.
Because to make decisions and to have this level of discomfort with decisions, past decisions that have been made, I think that it really is something very important, and not just to myself, but to other members of the council, so.
I understand. I also have the costs of the bus revolution, if you'd like that.
Yes.
3.7 million to date.
So we've spent $3.7 million, and we've changed some bus routes, but we aren't able to finish executing the
Yes,
project.
the bulk of that dollar amount was geared towards the bus network redesign that is waiting to be executed.
What is the bus network redesign? What does that mean?
That's the bus revolution. That's all.
So that's changing the numbers,
changing
changing the letters to numbers?
Well, that's part of it, but it's also changing all the routes themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The frequency, high frequency network, the reliability, the transfers, the things that all the outreach that we did for a couple years till
So we
last
spent
year,
$3.7 million
to date.
on this, okay. I'm not sure that it's the best use of resources, especially at a critical time like this. Actually, let me just put it this way, I don't think it's the best use of resources. Maybe you, I'm assuming that there was some kind of discussion that had that explain why internally you all felt that this was something that you had to do, that was important to do. I'm still not hearing that, but I don't want to belabor the point. The other thing I wanted to hear, just really briefly, it's been touched on here and there, but I wanted to go back on just sort of like quality of life in terms of riding SEPTA, because if you want to get your fares up, if you want to generate more revenue, one of the first things you have to do is collect revenue, and so fare evasion is just a huge problem. The last time I rode SEPTA, I was getting on the Broad Street line, and the person in front of me just hopped right over like it was nothing to it. And, you know, and it wasn't one person, it was like maybe 2 or 3 young men, but they just hopped right on over like there was nothing to it. And also smoking weed on the Market Frankfurt and also the Broad Street line, which is a problem. I've had staff come in and said, you know, like that they had to tell people who were near them smoking first thing in the morning, you know, can you go somewhere else? Because I have to go to work and I can't, you know, I don't want to carry that smell all day.
Right.
And so, you know, this shouldn't be a conversation that people have to have with other commuters on the Broad Street line.
Agreed. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so some of the progress we made with recruitment and retention has certainly contributed to, you know, things like our enforcement level across the board in all the categories of the crimes that we enforce is up dramatically. Fare evasion specifically, I'll address. I can assure you, fare evasion for the entire organization, from the GM down, is essentially our #1 priority right now. It has exploded after COVID. Some of the policies that we implemented hurt us as coming out of COVID, but as we have scaled up in law enforcement, enforcement's through the roof. We have put together a work group within SEPTA comprised of a number of staff departments and operating departments addressing fare evasion specifically. Some of the changes we made in that, I mean, council's familiar with the fact that we have returned, we've gotten away from an administrative model of enforcement, came back to a criminal justice model, increasing fines for fare evasion on the system. We've implemented much better tracking capability across SEPTA, so we have better data now to help deploy police officers and figure out ways to get our hands around this. We have coordinated with media outlets. We got to do a much better job with that in terms of educating our customers, letting them know we are cracking down on fare evasion. It's necessary, and what it does to our customers when people don't pay a fare, how it harms our customers. We coordinated with the courts to make sure that they're aware how important this is for us. That all of the citations that we write for fare evasion, we need them to be enforced at a high level. We are seeing that, and so we're happy about that. Fare evasion specifically, I'll just talk about the police department. Enforcement level for fare evasion was up 167% last year. So essentially 3 times the level of enforcement from the year before. Through the first quarter of 25, we've increased on top of that another 171%. I mean, pretty soon we're going to be doing nothing, the police department, but enforcing fares on this system. We are throwing really a lot at it right now. Smoking, I agree. Smoking's the #1 complaint from our customers, much more than fare evasion. The authority contributed to, worked closely with the city on a smoke-free campaign last year. We got some traction with that. We saw a reduction on the system, and then customer service scores started to improve. We are going to translate that same exact model to fare evasion now, because we saw some success with it. But smoking enforcement across the system, for us, there were more than 3,000 tickets issued last year. That was up 136% from the year before.
Okay. If you could put the information I requested earlier, if you could put that in writing and provide it to the chair, we would appreciate it so that we can circle back and have more conversation on it, just because I didn't get all the facts down. But we would like to have that in writing. And I think that's it for right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member Bass. Scott Sauer, I want to thank you and your team for being here for this budget hearing, and welcome. It's part of the process.
Thank you, Council President.
Welcome. And wish you the best as you continue to advocate. But just know that these members will make sure everything in our body possibly that we can do from an advocacy standpoint, partnership standpoint, that we will figure out a way to save SEPTA. We will have funding going into 26, whatever that looks like. And I also say for the record, for those who are documenting, can't be on the city of Philadelphia. We're doing our part. There's a $12 billion surplus in Harrisburg, $12 billion. The governor has a proposal for $300 million that could significantly support our efforts of making sure SEPTA has funding. And so we will advocate, work, and partner to make sure that this happens. As I say, not on my watch. With that being said, thank you very much. The chair recognizes Majority Whip, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Council President.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the public hearing and the meeting on the bills and resolutions before the committee today stand in recess until Tuesday, April the 22nd at 10 a.m. Room 400, City Hall. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. The motion carries. We stand in recess to April the 22nd at 10 a.m. Happy Easter, everyone, and happy Passover, if you celebrate.